Hello, everyone, and welcome to Spiritual Awakening Talk and Stories, a podcast built on love. And the mission of this podcast is to bring real people with real stories about their spiritual awakenings. Each and every one of us has a story to share, has a story to tell. And it is our stories that links us together. It is our stories that help us to grow and to develop, and most of all, to learn. And I hope that as you watch these podcasts, that you do all of those things, that you take away what resonates with you. And I hope that it inspires you to discover more about the beautiful and amazing human being that God, Creator, created you to be. And tonight, I have a very special guest with me. Her name is Elizabeth Daniel, and she is a psychic empath. She is a professional psychic. She works on a professional phone line, and she has been doing this for many years, over a decade. And I just love her. She's real. And what you're going to hear tonight is her real and unfiltered story. So I'm going to bring her on right now. So without any further ado, here is Elizabeth Daniel.
Hi, I'm so honored to be here. Thank
I'm
you.
so happy to have you here. So how we're going to begin is I just want you to tell everybody, how did all of this begin to unfold for you? How does somebody just become a psychic working on a psychic phone line? I think it's interesting. We need to know.
It's a very interesting story. So I was, let's see, postpartum with my third daughter, and I was at the point where I couldn't afford to put three children through daycare. So I was only making, I think, like $10.75 an hour.
Yeah.
And a daycare bill of $1,500 a month plus
Yeah.
was a little steep.
Yes.
So her father and I decided for me to stay at home and we would just kind of figure it out. And as the months grew on, we were beginning to really struggle financially.
Yeah.
And after many, many months of, is your door opening behind you?
No.
Is there a door there?
No.
Oh, weird.
It's a little window with a candle in it.
No, like right behind you, that black spot. Anyway,
Uh-uh.
my eyes are playing tricks on me. So, with an open door,
Maybe
an
there's
open
somebody
heart.
visiting us. We'll have to, maybe you'll tell us who it is. We are psychic and you might have another
Like,
story to add.
Who's coming in the room?
Yeah.
Anyway,
Yeah.
so I was worrying.
Mhm.
And I know that when you worry, it steals your time. And it really takes your focus away from your purpose in life.
Mhm.
So every single time I would worry about finances or money or my future, even my present,
Mhm.
it came to me to give gratitude to God.
Mhm.
So I said this prayer. Thank you, Lord, for revealing to me my life, path, and purpose. For I know it is not in your will for myself or my family to live in poverty. So every single time I would worry, I would say that prayer in my mind. Or if I was alone, I would say it
Mhm.
out loud. So it was about 6 months, 8 months, many months
Yeah.
of saying this prayer. And I was doing the dishes one day and I heard, I want you to do hope readings.
Mhm.
Now, this wasn't like an outside audible voice where it's like, Beth, this is God.
Mhm.
Do hope readings. It was just this inside thought, but
Yep.
it had a little bit of a different flair to it.
Mhm.
So I thought, that's interesting. Hope readings. And I thought about what that meant
Mhm.
because once upon a time, I was a youth pastor with my ex-husband, and we did this beautiful name blessing. In fact, I have the book here. that I got the name meanings from. It's the name book,
Mm-hmm.
and it's amazing. So check it out.
Okay.
Dorothy Astoria, and
Mm-hmm.
it has a spiritual connotation and a Bible verse
Mm-hmm.
and inherent meaning and origination of the name. It's
Yeah.
amazing. So
Yeah.
I thought it had something to do with that because when we were youth pastors, I did this name blessing of every single child or young adult in our youth group, and there were like 65 of them. So
Mm-hmm.
I'd look at their names in this book, and then I would pray and ask God, who did you create them to be?
Mm-hmm.
And the ironic thing was, these kids were either struggling with who they were in their identity in the moment,
Mm-hmm.
or their name meant exactly what it said in the book. It
Yeah.
was phenomenal. Anyway, so I thought that the hope readings had something to do with these name blessings I was doing.
Mm-hmm.
And it just, something about it just didn't feel right.
Mm-hmm.
And my ex-husband knew a gal who did airbrush makeup, the only one in our state,
Yeah.
Montana at the time.
Mm-hmm.
And she had just gotten married and she wanted to eventually live where her husband lives.
Mm-hmm.
And she asked me if I would want to be her makeup artist apprentice and
Yeah.
take over her business. I'm like, heck yeah. Who
Yeah.
doesn't want to play with makeup? Like, makeup is magical. Let's just be honest.
It
Like,
is.
it's
Yeah.
transformational.
Mm-hmm.
This is before all the contour videos, right?
Yes. Yes.
The
Exactly.
contour
Yeah.
craze of the 2020s.
Yeah.
But that was a closed door. We couldn't do anything because of licensing and everything. But every single time I was trying to figure out what this hope reading is, I'd like get a little
Mm-hmm.
tap on the shoulder. Beth, I want you to do hope readings.
Yeah.
So finally, after 2 weeks, I'm like, oh, what is a hope reading?
Right.
So what do you do when you don't know what something is?
Mm-hmm.
You Google it.
Right. Exactly.
So the hope readings, as I kind of really leaned into that energy or really thought about it,
Mm-hmm.
it had this prophetic feel to it.
Mm-hmm.
So I thought, okay, I'm going to Google hope reading. And I didn't come up with anything.
Yeah.
So then I Googled prophetic reading.
Mm-hmm.
And wouldn't you know, the first thing that comes up on Google was psychics needed to work from home.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought, Mm-mm.
Yeah.
I'm no psychic. I know that I had some prophetic gifts and
Right.
everything, but I'm no psychic.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to do this. No.
Mm-hmm.
So I fought with God for about 20 minutes in my kitchen.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, fine, I will fill out this one application, the
Mm-hmm.
top one, that's it.
Yeah.
And if I don't get the job, like, I'm just going to continue to investigate this hope reading.
Right.
Well, I fill out their little form, and the lady calls me the next day.
Yeah.
And she goes, you know what? I have a really good feeling about you. You
Mm-hmm.
can start whenever you want.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I didn't really know what was in a psychic reading.
Right.
And I was floored that I actually even got hired for it because that was nothing that I really wanted to do.
Right.
And I've known people who are like, oh my gosh, I would love to be psychic.
Yeah.
And it's like,
Yeah.
yeah, that's cool,
Yeah.
but that wasn't really my jam.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I started, and basically what I did was I just trusted the
Mm-hmm.
information
Yep.
that was being given to me by God.
Yes.
And 15 years later, here I am.
Yes.
And it's
Yes. And
amazing.
it's interesting because I want to say, because there's such a negative connotation to psychics, because they were labeled as charlatans, as people that dabbled in the darkness or whatever. And of course, there's always going to be that aspect of life. But every psychic I know right now is just like you and I. Our boss is upstairs, whatever name you want to call it, God, the Great Spirit, it's fine by me. But the thing is, when you're called, I know that voice too. I've had that voice since I was a little girl. So if people have never heard it, we are here to teach people. Everybody can hear that voice. That's why we're doing this podcast. But what God told me about Elizabeth before we even did this podcast, I just sat here and I got a little message for Elizabeth. And God said, "You're a special one, my oracle, a goddess divine. And you're filled with fire, passion, and love." And isn't that beautiful? Because we are all filled with fire, passion, and love. And we need to be taught that from an early age. And I just want you to continue, Elizabeth, with your story because, okay, so here you are. Like, that you're hearing a voice of guidance that I call God. I mean, say what you want. Like, people will call you a guru, whatever, but we all have this within. And some of us trust it and some of us block it out. And then some of us are really not aware that that is a thing. Like, we just think, it's kind of like something that, we're questioning ourselves. And so you're on this line. So now you've taken the leap of faith. You're just trusting what you have. And that is the biggest thing. The biggest message I want to tell everybody is there's no way that you or I could be a professional psychic if we did not trust everything that we receive. That is the bottom line. So that's how you take it to the next level, because you get something, and then it's for you and it's helped you, and then you can help others, and that's the whole deal. So you're sitting there, so you're now a professional psychic working on a psychic line, right? You went from being mom to prophetic readings for dreams or names or whatever, and all of this for children, and now you're there. So now tell me what's happening.
So what's very interesting is I didn't tell anyone what I did for 2 months because I really wanted to be feeling solid in what I do, because I was like, I don't want to tell people I'm working on a telephone psychic line, because the first thing people think of is Miss Cleo. They think I have a script, right? And I don't. So it's super interesting.
Yeah.
And one of the beginning readings, I guess, some very, very powerful things happened because I was open and I was just trusting. And every single time that phone rang, I'm like, Lord, what do you want to share with this person?
Yes.
And this one gal called me and she goes, can you just tell me something? And at the time I was working for a telephone psychic company called Keen. And I was on a carousel. So it was like $2.50 a minute. And the carousel was every single time they got a call on that line, they would kick it to you. So you didn't really know who or what you were going to get. And this gal is like, well, can you just tell me something? So I immediately saw in my imagination a flash of a crunched black vehicle. It was a sedan, kind of a 4-door compact car. And that's all I had. And she goes, wow. She goes, I've been lying on my couch for a week because I got in a car accident and I hurt my back and I haven't been able to move. And just me being able to confirm that God sees what she's going through was so huge for her, that she doesn't feel alone. So then, of course, since I trusted that image in my imagination, the whole reading or energy or whatever you want to call it, it was like unlocking another door for her specifically. And it was so wonderful. And at that time, I didn't know I was clairvoyant or clairaudient, claircognizant. I didn't even know what they meant. So I'm seeing these pictures and things in my imagination. And I always thought I just had an overactive imagination. And I knew when people were going through things or wanted something to hide, they would avoid it. They would avoid me.
Right.
And now I know why, because it comes up in conversation where I don't mean to say something. I was telling someone finally that what I was doing for a living, the telephone psychic.
Yeah.
So she was asking me this questions, and I said, well, someone will call me and they're like, well, what do you think about this? And then sometimes I'll hear a name like Stanley or
Mhm.
something. And
Mhm.
because that's not like a very common name. I
Right.
mean, my dog's name was Stanley. I had a Stanley dog. So
Mhm.
I used that name. And ironically, the person that she had in her mind, his name was Stanley.
Mhm.
So it's just one of those things where God will use your imagination,
Mhm.
your life experiences
Mhm.
to bring about his word or his comfort.
Mhm.
But the fine line is not projecting your own hurts, your own life, your own stuff into their reading, and bringing the message and describing it or repeating what you hear exactly, because
Mhm.
it may not make sense to you, but it makes sense to the person you're giving the reading for.
Yes.
And you
Exactly.
have to trust it and not interject, because you have to remember you're the messenger.
Right.
And back in the day when they used Morse code,
Mhm.
they had to write down exactly the message boop, boop, boop,
Right.
boop, 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 that they
Right.
got,
Yeah.
because it made a difference.
Right.
And they were just a messenger, and that's how I feel I'm
Yep.
just a messenger, and
Yep.
I want to help people
Mhm.
learn how God specifically speaks to them.
Mhm.
And when I say speak, it's not always like a voice in your head.
Right.
There's symbolism, there's all kinds of different ways God speaks.
Mhm.
But the other caveat to that is sometimes people want so badly to have these signs of confirmation
Mhm.
that every little thing is a sign of confirmation,
Mhm. It's true.
because they want it so badly. So it's a very fine line, and that's where your discernment and judgment comes into play, and you have to be real with yourself.
Yes. And when people are on their journey, I can get a lot of calls with people that I just know automatically like they're opening up spiritually, and they want somebody to confirm to them that what they're experiencing is indeed real. And so that's another reason why a person will call a psychic, because they're looking for somebody to know things that other people wouldn't necessarily know, but to also know that they are opening up in that way, and they want to learn. And it's so important, and it's such a needed thing, because I don't know
Mhm.
how you feel about this, but I feel like, we have therapists in the world, we have doctors, we have, psychiatrists, we have all of these things, we have medicine, but yet people call us psychic because they long for connection. And what is it that they really long for connection to? In my opinion, I think it's divine connection. And we
Mhm.
are just kind of sitting in that space, not in an egotistical way, because please, to do this work, as well as I, you have to park your ego at the door.
Mhm.
It's like you said, you cannot project anything that is your life experience, yet you can use your life experience. But when you're getting the messages, you have to make sure it's clear and specifically for them, So,
Exactly. Well, and
yeah.
people crave the Rhema word of God. And the Rhema word of God is that now spoken word of God.
Mhm.
People crave it. And that's why they're looking into all kinds of different new age things or
Mhm.
witchcraft or whatever, because they want that experiential knowledge and wisdom that
Mhm.
you can only get through God.
Right. Right.
And of course, there are other energies and entities that are like,
Yeah.
ooh, we got a live one,
Right.
aisle 5. Let's go.
Exactly. Exactly. And we could have a whole other podcast just on that
Yeah.
aspect. Just as there's night and day, there's light and dark in the spiritual realms. And we don't spend our time worrying about that.
No.
But yet I have callers, and I'm sure you're the same, because if you're aware, some people don't have the consciousness, but they will find you, and you're there to help them,
Mhm.
to maybe step out of fear, or something they've experienced was traumatic. So it takes a lot of bravery to sit in that seat, because you don't know what's coming at you for that day, but you're trusting and knowing that you are exactly where you need to be. And you're like, okay, God, like I'm here, bring it. I'm ready. And I'm not flying alone, So,
Mm-hmm.
so yeah, so like I said, that's a whole other topic, and a lot of people don't deal with it, but you and I don't have a problem with dealing with the night and day or the dark and the light, because there is both. Um, that's just the
Mm-hmm.
way it is. Um, so anyway, to get you back on track with your story, so now you're getting all these awarenesses, which I love, because you are so organic. Like nobody taught you. Like I sat in psychic
True.
development. Like I knew I had this stuff, but I wanted to like learn everything and understand it and dissect it. And I wasn't thrown into the arena like you were. So now you're getting it as you go, like call by call. So that must have been like earth shattering for you.
It was quite a learning experience.
Yep. Yep.
Um, because I even had some medium experiences, and
Mhm.
even still to this day, I'm not sure how I really feel about the medium experiences, even though I have them all the time.
Yep. like my door opening behind me.
Yeah, exactly. And
Yeah.
it's I love it because
Mhm.
I just trusted creator, God,
Mhm.
spirit,
Mhm.
whatever you want to call that higher power.
Right.
And I didn't have anyone putting their own spin on my teaching.
Yep. Yep.
I grew up with my mother telling me, "Oh, Elizabeth, you're just too sensitive. You're reading into everything."
Yeah.
Well, yeah, well, now I know why.
Yeah.
And
Right.
it wasn't until I was over 30 that I realized my sensitivity
Mhm.
was, in fact, a blessing and a gift and not a
Yeah.
curse.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because when I really finally figured out that, okay, I can feel things,
Mhm.
I honestly thought I had something wrong with me. I was discovering the fact that, well, maybe I'm bipolar.
Mhm.
Maybe I have something wrong with me, because I can look at someone and
Yeah.
they're like telling me this great story,
Mhm.
and certain body parts would be highlighted and I couldn't stop
Yes.
staring, like a hand or whatever.
Yeah.
And then, to find out that um there is this one kid, how the Mormon missionaries come to your house
Mhm.
and share the good news. And so
Yeah.
I love those things. I'm like, come on in, let's have
Yep.
an
Yep.
experience.
Yep.
And this one kid, they kept coming to my house, and they got the big elder from the big town next door, and
Mhm.
they come to my house, and this young man is talking and his hands were highlighted to me, and I kept just looking at his hands. It's not like they were vibrating, there wasn't
Right.
any color, but I just kept looking at his hands, and
Right.
in my mind I'm like, Lord, like what's the deal with his hands,
Right.
and then I hear that he wanted to do work with his hands,
Mhm.
and he couldn't because he has arthritis.
Mhm.
So I thought, oh, wow, okay, I have to step out and say this.
Yeah.
So I said, do you have a problem with arthritis in your hands, and you really wanted to work with your hands, like
Mhm.
intricate detail, like a
Mhm.
surgeon or something? And he started crying, and
Yeah.
he's like, yes, I want to go to school for surgery,
Yeah.
but I have rheumatoid arthritis.
Yeah.
And he was 19 or something.
Oh,
And it
yeah.
was so sad. But you know how a lot of times people with arthritis, their knuckles are big and swollen? His weren't. Like, they just looked
Yeah.
like regular hands. He just had a
Yeah.
lot of pain.
Yeah.
But we prayed for him,
Mhm.
and it's like
Yeah.
God shows up in those little ways, and that's where you have to trust, and that's where the power is.
Right.
Stepping
Right.
out and trusting, okay, this
Yeah.
is it. And sometimes you don't get it right,
Mhm.
or sometimes if you step out and the person's like, oh no, that doesn't resonate, that doesn't feel good,
Mhm.
uh sometimes they may not know, or the message at that moment may not be computing,
Right.
or it's so much ahead of time
Yes.
that then they go through and then they're like, oh my gosh,
Yeah.
what?
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
heard about this 5 years ago.
Yes. Yes. I know. It's amazing. And people get mad sometimes at their psychic because they think, we're telling them something, it doesn't make sense. Well, we don't always know the linear timeline of it, but we get the information, like you said, it could be a month from now, like we get a general, but there's things that we're shown out into the past. So, I'm sure you have this experience. Like, I'm sure you get people call you just to tell you, oh my gosh, you told me this like so and so long ago, and it was absolutely right, but I didn't believe you at the time, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
That happens. Or
Mm-hmm.
I'll have people hang up on me because oftentimes, so in our field, if
Mm-hmm.
we tell someone something they don't want to hear, they're like, click. Or I
Yeah.
guess now it's like, you've been
Yeah.
canceled.
Oh, I
You
know.
done, son.
I know. It's so funny. It's not as effective in some way, but we feel
No.
it the same. It sounds the same to me on the other end of the line, though. I'll tell you.
Oh, to feel the rage of really
Yeah.
hanging up on
Yeah.
someone.
Yeah. Oh
But
my gosh.
anyway,
Yeah.
they'll call me 2 or 3 years later and they'll say, I spoke to you 2 or 3 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, I thank them for calling back. And they
Yep.
say, you were the only one who told me the truth.
Yep. Yep.
And I want to thank you.
Mm. That's
And
why I
to
love you,
me,
because I know you resonate with me on every level because you are truth, and that's my whole life quest. It's about truth, and it's funny because people will say to me, "I had somebody today like, I want you to tell me the truth," and I'm like, "Oh, honey, when you call me, that's all you're ever gonna get." And she's like, "Don't water anything down." I'm like, "I will tell you in a way that it will make sense to you, and it's never going to be anything that makes you feel bad, because that's the one thing that I never want to do. If people call me, make them feel worse than they might have felt before they called me up. I'm sure you feel
mm-hmm.
the same way.
Oh, absolutely. And it's interesting too, because spirit always has a way of communicating to the person I'm giving a reading for in a way that they'll receive it.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
if not, I always say I can only tell you what I hear, feel, and see.
Mm-hmm.
If you have any question at any time, don't be afraid to ask,
Right.
because I'm here to help you.
Right.
And sometimes I'll be talking to very educated people, highly, highly educated Ivy League people who are very accomplished. And I can only use my simpleton words, like I'm a redneck, whatever.
Oh my gosh, you're a riot. You're just a real person, just being real, call it what you will. I don't like labels of labeling ourselves. If you're being authentic, I don't care if you are like totally educated or you're just an average person, it doesn't matter. It's about being real, and that's what you're doing. You're just being real, right?
And it brings it back to that connection.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
People in this technology world,
Mm-hmm.
people crave connection now more than ever.
I agree. And that's one of the reasons why I was called to do this podcast, because the days of old and we still do like to sit around the campfire and tell stories, because you're a girl like me, we like to get out there and do outside stuff and do that, but
yes,
a lot of people don't do that. And this is kind of like fireside chat, like of days gone by, where people would talk about things, experiences. And that's really what it's about. And you call your site 406 experiences. So
yeah.
it is about that.
So the reason why it's 406 is
Mm-hmm.
because 406 is the area code for the whole state of Montana.
Wow.
So you could live in Miles City, which is way on the east side, or you could live in Missoula, which is on the other side of the state on the west. And they're probably like a 12-hour drive apart. It's ridiculous.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
And they have the same area code, 406. And 406, because it's Montana, means mountain.
Mm-hmm.
And my heart is to help you have that mountaintop experience.
Mm-hmm.
Because when you're standing on that mountain, you can have a much different perspective
Yeah.
on your travels, your life, your
Yep.
trials.
Yep. You're absolutely right. And it's so funny because I always work with that symbolism too of the mountain. And it's funny that, thank you for sharing that because, from up high, I was thinking when you were talking about the mountain, like some people call us and they're like on the verge of falling off of the mountain. Okay. And then there's some people that are enjoying the view and they just need a little clarity. So, there's so much symbolism there just with a mountain itself, like the landscape is always changing. And I feel that's one of the most beautiful things about what we do. But I want you to explain to people, because this is what blows my mind, even to this day, about, okay, so we don't even have this connection. You and I, we see each other, we're interacting, people watching this, they're seeing us, they see how we process things, how we talk. But when somebody calls us, all we have is this. We have nothing else, nothing. And how we connect just proves that what we do is real, because we couldn't do it, because we wouldn't last a day if what we did wasn't real. Don't you agree?
100%. And honestly, I prefer giving readings over the phone now. I
Mm-hmm.
don't like Zoom readings. I don't like
Mm-hmm.
in-person readings
Me too.
because people's body language, okay,
Yeah.
obviously I talk with my hands. I'm
Me too.
Sicilian and I'm Scottish and I'm Jewish, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And it's part of who I am.
Yep.
Well, if I'm talking to someone and they're like, "Woo, hey, the plane," I would be completely distracted,
Yeah.
because what people don't understand is when you have that connection,
Mm-hmm.
you we have to hold a certain energy.
Mm-hmm.
Whether we get 400 calls or 2 calls, we still have to maintain that.
Right.
And it's
Right.
a very difficult thing to do. And if, say, a loud car goes by or someone slams a door or
Mm-hmm.
whatever, it breaks that connection.
Yeah.
So we have to be very in tune
Yeah.
to the point where, a dog could come in panting
Yeah.
and it's like, whatever,
Yeah.
it's fine. We're good.
It's Yep. Yep. I will say this though, and it's funny that you mentioned that. Some of the things like that connection is there because we just have this in the voice. That's all we have,
Mm-hmm.
and we have energy. And I'm like you, I feel things in people's bodies. So when I talk to them, I feel it, or I get things highlighted too. And so we're connecting in ways that people don't even understand. Okay, and so it's for what throws me off sometimes is like if somebody calls me and they're driving in their car and like there's a noise or there's a reverberation with their headset, and I'm trying to read this energy that's coming in, and it really throws me off. So anybody out there, if you're looking to go to a
Yeah.
telephone psychic, please make sure it's kind of quiet when you call them, because we really are trying to read you.
Well, and it just, when it's quiet, and if you have time to meditate or pray before the call and really think about the topics you want to go over, even if you only have like 5 or 10 minutes,
Yeah.
it makes our job easier.
Yes.
If someone's like, "Well, hurry up and tell me what you have," and they're
Right.
sitting in traffic trying to make a left-hand turn,
Right.
and you hear the clicker
Right.
going on and off and on and off, it
I
it makes a difference.
I know, it's so funny. And you know what? You brought up a good point too about saving time, because you're like me. I'm pretty much a no tools reader, okay? So,
Mhm.
but I do have tarot cards, and I do like to get a message in before I even connect. And then I do like to pull one card, because usually when I get in, there'll be words or phrases from that one card that ties it all together, that helps that person to know that we've really made the connection. So, there was a point I was going to make to that. Oh yes, to really, if you have the question, please do ask, because we're going to get a lot of general. And if you want a
Mhm.
specific, you have to ask a specific question, because we're not going to be told everything, because there is that fine line there. What we see and what we're not supposed to see, right?
Right, and that's, if you want a specific answer, you have to ask a specific question. And if
Yes.
you're afraid because you don't want to, feed the psychic or the person you're talking to any information, then maybe you should really look at someone local that can sit with you
Mhm.
or buy a big block of time.
Yep.
Because usually if I do a reading that's off of the phone line,
Mhm.
I'll get the necessary information that I need. So
Mhm.
I prefer
Mhm.
first name, middle name, birthday.
Mhm.
People, it's hilarious. They're like, well, I don't know their birthday, because a lot of it is people wanting to know how others view them or
Right.
feel about them.
Mhm.
I don't know their birthday, but they're Pisces. Well, I don't do astrology, so you got me. I don't
Right.
know.
The fish.
I know that part, but I don't know what time of year, whatever. And I purposefully don't,
Yeah.
because A, I don't really resonate with Western astrology.
Mhm.
B, let's face it, people in our field are looked at as used car salesmen, right? There's a lot of really, really bad ones and a
Yep.
couple of good ones, but they're all
Yep.
like, hey,
Yeah.
I got something for you. And
Yeah.
that's how people view us.
Yeah.
Well, if I knew what a Pisces was,
Mhm.
they can be like, oh, that's all Pisces. And well, I don't even know what a Pisces is really, except there's two fish swimming in a circle chasing each
Mhm.
other's tails. Like, I
Yeah.
don't.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
But long story short,
Mhm.
I take that information, so first name, middle name, birthdays,
Mhm.
and I will pray, meditate,
Mhm.
and ask God, what do you want me to share with this person about this individual?
Mhm.
And I'll do all of that before the reading.
Yeah.
Well, on the phone, it's quick fire.
Right.
So it's like boom, boom, boom. And
Mhm.
then it might be over in 2 minutes,
Right.
you know?
Right. Yep.
It's like slam bam, thank
Never
you,
mind.
ma'am.
We could
Yeah.
go into that one, but we'll just hang that one up. I'm not even gonna go where my mind went. But anyway. Yeah. We're just gonna have fun.
Remember to put your money on the nightstand before you
Yeah.
leave.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. Hilarious. Hilarious. Oh my god.
But
Yeah.
it's great. I love it. And here's another thing too. So
Uh-huh.
when I got hired on with the current company that I'm with now,
Mhm.
I was looking at everyone else's profile,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah.
So it's like, oh, psychic Luna is a fifth generation psychic, and
Yeah.
she's been doing it for 30 years. And I'm like, she's 23. Like, how does this even make sense? But I got really intimidated
Yeah.
by
Yeah.
everyone's experience,
Yeah.
and I had to stop looking. It's like the obsession, like a
Mhm.
lot of people have with Facebook and looking at their exes or whatever. It's like, what are they doing now?
Yeah. 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 I
But
feel
we
like I feel like that was another learning experience for you too, because you were taught the lesson, never compare yourself. You just went back within again and you said, look, I am who I am, and I'm just going to read the way I read. And if that's who they are, they're 20 and they've been reading for 40 years, good for them. Maybe I'll catch up to them one day, but whatever, I'm still going to be me.
Yeah, that wasn't my life experience, but my heart is for people who have the gift
Hmm.
and they're like, well, my boss just broke down in front of me and I'm feeling really bad and I'm feeling like her marriage is going to break up, but I don't know.
Hmm.
But you still feel that
Yeah.
emotion, you feel that energy.
Yeah.
And I want to teach people not only how to recognize it,
Hmm.
but how to not hold on to it and
Right.
let it just pass over them like a storm.
Right.
It's easier said than done,
It
but
is.
that's where my heart is, because I didn't have that. And
Right.
I'm really trying to teach my children how to
Yes.
trust their intuition,
Hmm.
because life's too short.
Yep.
And I'm like, oh, I'm not crazy, I'm just psychic.
Mhm. Yeah, and I'm so glad you brought up the children, because that's part of the mission of why I'm doing this podcast, because I want parents to know right now these children coming in are
Mhm.
going to be more gifted than we were. Okay, so it's my belief, what spirit tells me, that these children coming in are coming in with more and more awareness, and we see this all around us. For example, there's even kids that remember past lives, like
Yeah.
things that were taboo, but like we know that's reality. We know this isn't our first rodeo, you know. So in that, and then they'll see things, and we were taught, oh, you're imagining it, or there's no such thing. When we were in complete terror or trauma, I had night terrors. Like, I made up a prayer to not see the things that I saw in my dreams. I couldn't sleep at night. So I made up a prayer to make it stop, and it did, thank God. But I was completely traumatized by these dreams that were so real. But now I know why, because we're out of our body at night. But there was nobody there to tell me that. So
Mm-mm.
just you bringing it up, and that's what I hope too, that people that watch these podcasts will learn from us. And they have a gifted child, and we're all gifted, but these children are coming in just so much more gifted than we were able to come in under, you know. And this veil of amnesia is going to lift with each generation, I
Mm-hmm.
feel. And then one day we will not be able to hide feelings or emotions or thoughts from everybody, because people will be like us. Like, they will know what somebody's thinking or feeling or what they're experiencing, and everybody's going to have that ability. So eventually I feel that's where humanity goes as a collective.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why I feel so called and drawn to make these podcasts, because um, there's people searching for information right now, you know.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
I feel everybody does already have that ability to know what people are feeling or thinking,
Yep.
but most people aren't vulnerable enough
Yeah.
to acknowledge it.
Yes. Yeah. Or they think they're crazy, like it's not real, like it's not true. But I'm here to tell you, everything that you feel, everything that your spiny senses tell you is truth. You just know it in your being.
Well, and even if it doesn't manifest the way you think it does,
Mm-hmm.
it's a teaching moment.
Yep.
And it's, how do I say, it's not ever really a bad answer because there's always a lesson in it.
Yeah.
I remember I did a reading for a celebrity, and they told me their name and I was joking,
Mm-hmm.
like, in my mind, like, oh,
Mm-hmm.
ha ha ha, are you
Mm-hmm.
married to blah blah blah?
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't. And then I was so, like, kind of caught up in that moment
Yeah.
because I hadn't been doing this for very long,
Mm-hmm.
and it turned out to be that person.
Yeah.
And this is my learning lesson, and I wish I could tell this person I'm very sorry. Like, I'm sure right now that person wouldn't even care, but in that moment, I told that individual what they wanted to hear,
Mm-hmm.
and they knew that wasn't true.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then a week later, the details of what we talked about, and I'm like, oh my gosh, because I didn't want to hurt her because she was already crying and upset
Right.
and everything.
Yeah.
Well, watching one of their movies later, they mentioned that they liked calling psychic lines, and I'm like, that's true. That's
Mm-hmm.
true.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And I, missed the mark, and I feel that's why, for me, that was a lesson that I
Mm-hmm.
learned from that individual,
Yep.
to as hard as the information is,
Yep.
to always try to tell them the truth with
Yes.
integrity
Yep.
and hold them in love, because I feel even more than, telling people the psychic information,
Mhm.
it's so important to hold that space, because oftentimes when we are called,
Mhm.
it's stuff that they wouldn't want to share with anyone else,
Right.
or they've already exhausted all of their friends and
Yes.
family,
Mhm.
and they don't have any other outlet,
Right.
or they say they use it for therapy.
Yeah.
And if you ever do call, you have to really, really trust your intuition
Mhm.
on the person you choose,
Mhm.
because I encourage you to always be particular about whom you choose to speak into your life.
Right.
Are they speaking words of life,
Mhm.
or are they speaking from their own fears, their
Right.
own hurts, their own wounds?
Right. Right.
That's pretty reckless.
I have to say, I have to add to that, because I'm sure you can relate to this, and I'm sure you'll have a story, but I've had countless people call me, and they've called the line, maybe 4 or 5 times, and they've gotten terrible things told to them, and they're a
Yeah.
basket case by the time they get to me. And I'm like, they get a totally different reading, and they're like, they don't even want to believe that what I'm saying is truth. I'm like, look, you called this line for help. You called to feel better. The what you received didn't do that, but you called me, and you're getting something that's going to make you feel better. Now take what I give you and take the positive, and let all of that other stuff go. And don't call again. Tell them not to call. Don't call another
Yeah.
psychic again. Just really just rest into this, and you're safe, and you're loved, and I understand you, and you're going to be fine. Because people, I've had that happen, and I'm sure you have tons of
Mhm.
stories about that, right?
Oh, I have a story for everything. That's why
Yep.
you have to keep me on topic, because I'll go off on all these
Me
little
too,
rabbit
I'm the same
trails.
way. Yeah. Yeah.
So, and here's the thing too.
Mhm.
Let me go circle back to the children.
Yep.
I also remember having paralyzing dreams, so much so, like, I remember being attacked by
Yep.
demons in my
Yep.
dream, and my mom woke me up, went to get me a cup of water. By the time she came back, I'd fallen back asleep, and she scared the ever living out of me
Yep.
because I was totally out of it. And
Mhm.
I feel like people who are born with this gift, or anointed with this gift,
Mhm.
they are targeted at very early ages with
Yes.
sleep deprivation, sleep
Yep.
problems, nightmares,
Yes.
fears, phobias, all that stuff, because that fear is going to not allow them to really sink into their abilities. So it's kind of like,
Yeah.
um, if you're breeding racehorses, maybe this is a terrible example, but you live next to your competitor, and your competitor is a little shisty, and
Mhm.
they see this foal that has the best potential to win everything.
Mhm.
They're going to do everything they can to sabotage the growth
Mhm.
and nurturing of that foal.
Yes.
And that's what's happening to our children,
Yep.
and even a lot of adults who are turning corners and wanting to wake up.
Yeah.
It's hard to get out of those normal patterns, those
Yeah.
familiar spirits, because they are familiar spirits.
Yeah.
I mean, that's why people subconsciously choose abusive relationships over and over again. It's not that they want it, but subconsciously and spiritually, the family's here.
Right.
They don't know any different,
Right. Right.
and they're drawn to it. And it's
Don't you think, like, building out on this topic of children and even adults, like young people with problem sleeping, seeing things, in other cultures, spiritual awakening is understood and embraced, and it's real. In Western culture, you're a wackadoodle, right? And I feel that a lot of people that might be medicated in ways by
Mhm.
our Western way of treating people for psychological things, for even physical things, there, because all of this can be physical too. Like, we can experience things in our bodies metaphysically, spiritually, and it manifests physically. So there are ailments that are because of these things that we experience. And I feel like the wave of the future is acknowledging that we are human beings, but we're spiritual. Like, we came from somewhere else. We're just in these bodies right now, but we are spiritual beings living a human experience. And that's what we
Mhm.
need to get more in touch with, because I feel like if people were acknowledged, and somebody maybe asked them without judgment, really, what is going on? Why can't you sleep? My son, for example, he's a sensitive from an early age. He would make like moats around his bed, and he'd have like little cutout, like my dad would make him like little wooden guns and things like that to play with, little boys. And he would make moats and have all this around his bed, because he was seeing things and he was ready to fight them. And he
Mm-hmm.
used whatever he had to protect himself. So, but I understood this because I experienced these things too, but I can't imagine if he didn't have me for a mom, like somebody would have heavily medicated him, or maybe teachers would have treated him differently. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So it's so important that we get this message out. If you notice things about your child, think about it from a different way. If there's things different about you, think about it from a different perspective as well. Maybe you were this child and you grew up and you learned how to cover these things or perhaps mask them. And like you said, maybe things that you do that aren't good for you are because of you've tried to bury these things.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
So I feel too sometimes that happens during pregnancy as well. When
Mm-hmm.
I was pregnant with my third child, for weeks, I felt like there was someone standing at the foot of my bed and watching me
Mm-hmm.
sleep.
Yep.
And it kind of freaked me out. This is before I started working as a psychic. This is like when I'm thinking, am I bipolar? Like
Right.
what's really happening?
Yeah.
Um, and I always wanted to keep my feet under the blankets
Yeah.
because I was afraid something was going to snatch it,
Right.
my leg, and pull me out of the bed.
Yep.
Well, I had that feeling one night,
Mm-hmm.
and the home we were living in at the time,
Mm-hmm.
when you walked from our master bedroom to go to the kids' rooms, you had to walk through the living room.
Mm-hmm.
And we always knew when one of the kids got up, they weren't feeling good or needed a drink because the floor would always creak in a certain place.
Yeah.
So I'm feeling this feeling. I couldn't sleep. I look up and I see this shadow figure
Mm-hmm.
kind of get out of the way and just kind
Mm-hmm.
of hide in the wall.
Right.
And I'm like, oh my gosh. Like I saw that. I really saw that.
Yeah.
And who am I going to tell?
Right.
This is freaky.
Right.
And then the floor creaked.
Yes.
And then
Mm-hmm.
my my ex-husband was like, there's somebody in the house.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, thank God I'm not the
Right.
only one. Like
Right. Right.
now I can tell him what I saw.
Yeah.
And he took it a lot better.
Yeah.
And I have a hilarious story about our first date that I'll share with you at another time. But
Oh,
there
go ahead
are
and share it now if you want. We can use some
okay.
humor. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Um so our first real date
Mm-hmm.
was on New Year's Eve.
Mm-hmm.
And we of course like went drinking and dancing and everything, and we were getting ready to go,
Mm-hmm.
and we had such a good time.
Yep.
And we leave the back of this bar. Well, this was in Missoula, Montana.
Mm-hmm.
And the bar to go to was a double white trailer.
Uh-huh. I love it.
It's awesome. So
Yeah.
we're leaving this bar,
Mm-hmm.
and this gal dressed in all black, and she was wearing a forest green scarf,
Mm-hmm.
comes up to me,
Mm-hmm.
and she's like, you know the secret.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, oh no, this isn't what I wanted to share with him on our first date.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like I really
Yeah.
like this guy. He's hilarious.
Yeah.
And then I look at him, and she hisses at him and lunges at him. And I'm like, oh man, this is so spiritual.
Yeah.
And she goes, it's not him. And then she's like, you know the secret.
Oh my.
And she him, and I'm like, oh no.
Huh?
I just got blocked on my first date with this guy,
Yeah.
right?
Yep.
Like now I'm a cuckoo.
Yep.
And we get in the car, and he's super disturbed by this.
Yeah.
He turns on the car because it's dead of winter. It's really cold out.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh no, here it comes. And he's like, so who's your witch friend there?
Yep.
I
Yep.
was like, well, I'm not a witch.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know who that was.
Yep.
But if we continue to date,
Mm-hmm.
this kind of thing is going to happen.
Yeah.
So we'll have a lot of experiences.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
think that's it. Like,
Yeah.
if you're the type of person that goes to the grocery store and somebody stops you and pours their heart out to you,
Hmm.
their spirit acknowledges your spirit to
Yes.
is acknowledging that your spirit is a safe and loving place to be.
Yes.
So embrace it.
Right.
You know, they so many people need that space to be held for them, that
Hmm.
acknowledgement,
Yeah.
and just kindness and love.
Yeah.
And that's really what it is.
Yeah.
And I feel so blessed to be able to do what I do
Hmm.
and really help people remember who they were created to be.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. I agree with you. Like I do feel blessed, although some days are you feel totally stressed. It can
Mhm.
be stressful, but it's like you just have to, sometimes it's rapid fire, but you have to just take a few deep breaths and get back into the zone and be the best you can for that next person. And it is about, and you're right, it isn't just working, it is out in the day to day. And I feel like you are like me. I've always been like that.
Mhm.
Like people will just talk to me, even as a young child, like people would tell me things. I'd be like, what was that about? And then I would always know what to say. And I'd be like, how did I know what to say? And they would,
Yeah.
they would be like, thanking me like, oh, I feel so much better. And I'd be like, well, that was interesting. You know, like things like that would happen, but it was always so like normal for me.
Mhm.
Did that happen to you too at a young age? People would
Oh,
tell you things?
absolutely. And I've always been kind of different.
Yeah.
Even before all of this happened, my dad would always tease me. He's like, "Hey, Beth, are you talking to people no one else can see again?"
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's actually very true.
Yeah, it really is. It really is. And before we started making this podcast, we were talking about, generational, like how we've connected the dots. And I want to share with you a story that I have from my grandmother on my dad's side, my grandmother Kennedy. And she took my dad aside one day and she said to him, don't you ever do anything to that girl, like in other words, don't spank me, don't reprimand me, like be very gentle with me, she said, because she's special. And you see how this isn't just now, this is awareness then, and they knew, but they couldn't speak of it. But what she was saying was she knew that I was a sensitive.
Mhm.
Yep.
I
Yep.
love it.
Yep. Yeah. So I hope that helps people to kind of connect the dots in their own life when they think about things that they've experienced or things that their elders might have said to them, in their past, to kind of stitch the story together. And that's what spirit does. We don't learn everything all at once. God, the universe, doesn't want us to learn everything at once. We're children here on this planet. We're learning. We came here to learn. And you don't make the sweater all at once. You make it stitch by stitch, right? And
Mhm.
so that's how we learn spiritually. That's how we put the pieces of the puzzle together. And what we take with us of value is not what we buy in the store. It's not the things that we acquire. It's not the home. It's not any of that. It's connections like what we have. It's connection with family, with your children, with whoever it is that's important to you, because at the end of the day, when the curtain goes down and this play is over, those are the only things you're
Mhm.
bringing with you.
100%. And I also want to encourage your viewers and listeners to always ask questions.
Yeah. Yeah.
Don't take anything at face value.
Yeah.
Always ask questions and have that curious, open heart,
Yep.
because honestly, there are no real experts.
Hmm.
There are people who know more than you.
Yeah.
There always will be, but
Yeah.
there's no real experts, because I feel that spirit always has a way of throwing in that monkey wrench.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it's like, oh, you thought the Tasmanian devil was extinct.
Yeah.
Here's a couple more, you know?
Right. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And I say that too about people seeking a spiritual teacher, right?
Mhm.
Because you and I both teach spiritually. And I tell them, if somebody tells you they know everything and that their way is the only way, run for the hills, because we have already experienced that kind of oppression in our lives. So I don't know everything. I'm still learning just like everybody else, but I know quite a bit. And so what I know from right now can help other people. And then as I elevate and learn and continue to grow, then that brings up my level of consciousness and my competency, right, to help other people more. But I guarantee you that students that come to me are going to teach me things. And I am so grateful and I'm so thankful for that. And I will tell them, I never thought of it like that. And thank you for bringing that into my awareness, because it's all about just setting the ego, just parking the ego at the door when we're talking about spiritual things and the things that we don't really fully understand, and we're not going to, I don't think, for quite some time yet on the planet, unless some huge event takes place where we're all on the same playing field. I mean, that's a possibility. But
Yeah.
until then, we're all at different levels, and you have a piece of the puzzle, I have a piece, and everybody else has theirs, and together we're going to figure this out.
Well, and Jesus always said, like, be like a child, be like the
Yep.
children. And what are children? They don't worry,
Right.
and they play. They're not afraid to be goofy and fun,
Right.
and they ask a million and one questions.
Yep. Yep. So important. So important. And not only that, but everything that you see happening in the world right now, ask questions about that. If it doesn't feel right for you, know that you are being sold a story. And I actually have a prequel to this podcast that we are recording right now, Elizabeth, because I wanted to bring people into that consciousness before they watch this video. And it's actually airing tonight on YouTube, but they won't see this until they actually watch this video. But maybe they'll go back and watch it. But it's just so important now to step out of the stories that were being sold and to drop in to this place that we're talking about, to listen to that guidance, and to know that if you're seeing things out there that you're saying, this isn't making sense, it's not making sense. And you're being made to feel those things because you're to question what you're being fed.
Well, and I actually started taking clinical hypnotherapy
Mm-hmm.
courses. I'm in a school, an accredited school,
Mm-hmm.
because I want to know those techniques, tactics,
Yep.
the markers for information that is repeated over and over again. It gets
Yep.
into your subconscious, and
Yep.
it can change the way you view things.
Yes. It's not unlike, our brains are not unlike a computer. Like, the more that the information comes to us from many different sources in the same way, which is what, if you look at media and the mainstream and news and all of that, you can go to any state and you're going to be getting the same story out of different people, and everybody's getting fed the same thing. So this programming is hard to deprogram for people, and people aren't even aware that they're being programmed in a way. So it's fascinating that you are taking that like to the next level, because you want to understand that, and you want to teach people like on a very deep way, maybe with hypnosis, right, to kind of remove that programming.
Well, and the thing is too, when the religious or spiritual movements and political circles are saying the same thing, like the Great Awakening,
Mm-hmm.
it makes me question what exactly is the Great Awakening.
Right. Right.
You know?
And why were we asleep in the first place?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So on that note, I think if you have anything else to share, I just want to say that if you want a reading from Elizabeth, you can reach her on Facebook at the 406 Experience. And I guarantee you will get the truth, and you will get exactly what you saw here tonight, a beautiful human being sharing truth with whoever comes into her path. And so with that being said, I'm going to wish everybody light, love, peace, and blessings of all kinds. And Elizabeth, I thank you so much from the bottom of my heart for sharing your story with everybody out there. And it just felt so good tonight to be in your energy and to share this space.
Thank you so much for having me. I look forward to being here again.
I can't wait to have you on again. We have so much more to say.
I know there's so many tangents I could go off on. I'm like, nope, we only have an hour.
I know, I know. Awesome. So stay tuned, everyone, and thanks for watching. Bye bye now.